Yeah, up here. Very good, thank you.
I mean, it started, a couple of years ago when I was first reading up on the so-called Manosphere. It's this online community of, well, different clusters of communities of men who kind of group together for different reasons. And the film, it really became this idea of a character who just immerses himself in a world of men, and that blurs the lines between camaraderie and sexuality, and it all kind of leads to a sort of madness, a kind of a fever dream, and Manodrome emerged from that. Yeah.
Beyond grappling with masculinity or very blatant issues within society as a whole, it's really about the disconnect with what we intrinsically know as the truth and what we are bombarded with, which becomes the truth. And all of our collective doubts and past traumas and unresolved issues that create these fractured lives, which we see throughout the world, and the repercussions are endless. And to be able to tell stories like that in a touching way that are very real but heightened and relatable is a very unique trait.
As an American reading a script about this kind of dangerous spiraling into based on dangerous ideas about masculinity, it seemed like a very logical progression into gun violence. But I suppose because this is an international audience, especially in Germany, where laws and ideas around guns are so different, I suppose it will play as something particularly American. To me, when I read it, it just seemed like a very logical conclusion to this bleak tragedy.
Does it normalize kind of, extreme ideology? Well, I think that was partly what was interesting to me, is how radical ideology reaches the mainstream. And I think we see this in American politics, all the time now, how these, housewives in the Midwest are suddenly kind of, picking up assault rifles and reading up on, neo-Nazi ideology. And there is a way in which our culture is sort of moving so quickly, and probably because of the internet, and so things kind of tend to blur in all sorts of disturbing ways. But the idea that kind of radical ideology and extreme ideas about masculinity could somehow be, find this sort of softer domestic space, I thought was very interesting. And I feel like with all the characters in the film, and with Jesse's character in particular, this idea of softness, and men who are, in some ways running from their own softness, and in some ways, embracing extreme ideas about masculinity and still being sort of soft and domesticated, that was sort of a recurring interest for me. You have the situation where you have grown men in the world who have the sort of internal resources of little boys, and then having to kind of hide that and overcompensate with sort of hyper-aggression and posturing.
Manodrome.